Okay, these chapters are pretty short, so I'm gonna read from chapter 29 to the end of part 1, which is like not really a lot of pages, so let's go. Well, that's all over, thank heaven, was Anna's first thought when she had taken leave of her brother, who stood to the last moment obstructing the entrance to the railway carriage. She sat down beside her maid, Anushka, and peered round the dimly lit sleeping compartment. Thank heaven, tomorrow I shall see Cereza and Alex Alendrovitch again, and my good, accustomed life will go on as of old. With the same preoccupied mind that she had all that day, Anna prepared with pleasure and great deliberation for the journey. With her deft little hands she unlocked her red bag, took out a small pillow which she had placed on her knees, and locked the bag again. Then she carefully wrapped up her feet and sat down comfortably. An invalid lady was already going to bed. Two other ladies began talking to Anna. One, a fat old woman, while wrapping up her feet, remarked upon the heating of the carriage. Anna said a few words in answer, but not foreseeing anything interesting from the conversation, asked her maid to get out her reading lamp, fixed it to the arm of her seat, and took a paper knife and an English novel from her handbag. At first she could not read. For a while the bustle of the people moving about disturbed her, and when the train had finally started it was impossible not to listen to the noises. Then there was the snow beating against the window on her left, to which it stuck, and the sight of the guard who passed through the carriage closely wrapped up and covered with snow on one side, and also the conversation about the awful snowstorm which was raging outside distracted her attention. And so it went on, the same jolting and knocking, the same beating of the snow on the window pane, the same rapid changes from steaming heat to cold, and back again to heat, the gleam of the same faces through the semi-darkness, and the same voices. But at last Anna began to read and follow what she read. Anushka was already dozing, her broad hands, with a hole in one of the gloves, holding the red bag on her lap. Anna read and understood, but it was unpleasant to read, that is to say, to follow the reflection of other people's lives. She was too eager to live herself. When she read how the heroine of the novel nursed a sick man, she wanted to move about the sick room with the noiseless footsteps. When she read of a member of the Parliament making a speech, she wished to make that speech. When she read how Lady Mary... I need to kill myself, I can't fucking read. When she read how Lady Mary rode to hounds, teased her sister-in-law, and astonished everybody by her boldness, she wanted to do it herself. But there was nothing to be done, so she forced herself to read, while her little hand toyed with the smooth paper knife. The hero of the novel had nearly attained to his English happiness of a baronetcy. Well, I know that probably means becoming a baron. Guys, this is some freaking old people reading things. Okay. And Anna wanted to go to the estate with him when she suddenly felt that he must have been ashamed, and that she was ashamed of the same thing. But what was he ashamed of? What am I ashamed of? She asked herself, with indignant surprise. She put down her book, leaned back, and clasped the paper knife tightly in both hands. There was nothing to be ashamed of. She called up all her Moscow memories. They were all good and pleasant. She recalled the ball and Vronsky and his humble, enamored glaze, and their relations with one another. There was nothing to be ashamed of, and yet the very point of her recollections, when she remembered Vronsky, the feeling of shame grew stronger, and some inner voice seemed to say to her, "Warm, very warm, burning. Well, what of it?" she finally said to herself with decision, changing the position on the seat. What does it signify? Am I afraid to look straight at it? What of it? Just as if there existed, or could exist, between me and this officer lad any relations differing from those with other acquaintances. She smiled disdainfully and again took up her book. But now she absolutely could not understand what she was reading. She passed the paper knife over the window pane, then pressed its cold, smooth surface against her cheek, and almost laughed aloud, suddenly overcome with unreasoning joy. She felt that her nerves were being stretched like strings drawn tighter and tighter round pegs. She felt her eyes opening wider, her fingers and toes nervously moving, and something inside her stopping her breath, and all the forms and sounds in the swaying semi-darkness around struck her with unusual vividness. Momentary doubts kept occurring in her mind as to whether the train was moving forwards or backwards or standing still. Was it Anushka who was sitting beside her, or a stranger? And am I here myself? Am I myself or another? She was afraid of giving way to these delirious thoughts. Something seemed to draw her to them, but she had the power to give way to them or to resist. To get it over, she rose, threw off her wrap, and took off the cape of her coat. She came to her senses for a moment, and knew that the lean peasant in the long nankin coat with a button missing, who had come into the compartment, was the carriage stoker, and was looking at the thermometer, and that the wind and snow rushed in when he opened the door, but afterwards everything became confused. The peasant in the long coat started gnawing on something on the What? What do you mean gnawing on something on the... Yo, you're crazy, bro. Tolstoy, you're crazy, by the way. The peasant in the long coat started gnawing at something on the wall. The old woman began stretching her legs at the whole length of the carriage, which she filled with a black cloud. Then something squeaked and clattered in a dreadful manner, as if someone was being torn to pieces. Then a blinding red light appeared, and at every last thing was hidden by a wall. Anna felt as if she had fallen through the floor. But all this did not seem dreadful, but amusing. The voice of a man, wrapped up and covered with snow, shouted something just above her ear. She rose and came to herself, understanding that they had stopped at the station, and this was the guard. She asked Anusha to give her the cape she had removed and a shawl, and putting them on, she moved to the door.
Are you going out?
Asked Anushka. Yes, I want a breath of air. It's so hot in here. She opened the carriage door. The snow and wind rushed toward her, and a tussle with her for the door. And this too struck her as amusing. She went out. The wind seemed to only waited for her. It whistled merrily. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm like kind of sick. And tried to seize and carry her off, but she held onto the cold door post, and held down her shawl. Then stepping onto the platform, she moved away from the carriage. The wind blew boisterously into the little porch of the carriage, but on the platform sheltered by the train it was quiet. With enjoyment she drew in full breaths of the snowy frosty air as she stood beside her carriage, looking round at the platform at the lighted station. Chapter 30. A blustering storm was rushing and whistling between the wheels of the train and round the pillars and the corners of the station. The railway carriages, the pillars, the people, and everything that could be seen were covered on one side with snow, and that covering became thicker and thicker. A momentary lull would be followed by such a terrific gust that it seemed hardly possible to stand against it. Yet people, merrily exchanging remarks, ran over the creaking boards of the platform, and the big station doors were constantly being opened and shut. The shadow of a man stooping slipped past her feet, and she heard a hammer striking the carriage wheels. Let me have the telegram! Came an angry voice from the other side of the stormy darkness.
Here, please, number 28!
Cried other voices, while many people, unmuffled up and covered with snow, ran hither and thither. Two gentlemen passed her with glowing cigarettes between their lips. She took another deep breath to get her fill of fresh air, and had already drawn her hand out of her muff to take hold of the handrail and get onto the train, when another man wearing a military overcoat came close between her and the wavering lights of the lamp. She turned round and instantly recognized Vronsky. With his hand in salute, he bowed and asked her if she wanted anything, and whether he could be of any service to her. For some time she looked into his face without answering, and though he stood in the shade, she noticed, or thought she noticed, the expression of his face and eyes. It was the same expression of the respectful ecstasy that had so affected her the night before. She had assured herself more than once during those last few days, and again a moment ago, that Vronsky in relation to her was only one of the hundreds of everlastingly identical young men she met everywhere, and that she would never allow herself to give him a thought. Yet now, at the first moment of seeing him again, she was seized by a feeling of joyful pride. There was no need for her to ask him why he was there. She knew as well as if he told her that he was there that he was there in order to be where she was. I did not know you were going too. Why are you going? She asked, dropping the hand with which she was about to take hold of the handrail. Her face beamed with joy and animation she could not repress. Why am I going? He repeated, looking straight into her eyes. You know that I'm going in order to be where you are, said he. I cannot do otherwise. At that moment, the wind, as if it had mastered all obstacles, scattered the snow from the carriage roofs and set a loose sheet of iron clattering. And in the front, the deep whistle of engine howled mournfully and dismally. The awfulness of the storm had appeared still more beautiful to her now. He had just said what her soul desired, but her reason dreaded. She did not reply, and she saw a struggle in her face. Forgive me if my words displease you, he said humbly. He spoke courteously and respectfully, but so firmly and stubbornly that she was long unable to reply. What you are saying is wrong, and if you're a good man, I beg you to forget it, as I will forget it, she said at last. Not a word, not a movement of yours will I ever forget, nor can I. Enough, enough, she cried. vainly trying to give a severe expression to her face, into which he was gazing eagerly. She took hold of the cold handrail, ascended the steps, and quickly entered the little lobby leading into the carriage. But in that little lobby she stopped, going over in her imagination what had just taken place. Though she could remember neither his nor her own words, she instinctively felt that the momentary conversation had drawn them terribly near to one another, and this both frightened her and made her happy. After standing still for a few seconds, she went into the carriage and sat down. The overwrought condition, which tormented her before, not only returned again, but grew worse and reached such a degree that she feared every moment that something within her would give way under the intolerable strain. She did not sleep at all that night, but the strain and the visions which filled her imagination had nothing unpleasant or dismal about them. On the contrary, they seemed joyful, glowing, and stimulating. Toward morning, Anna, while still sitting up, fell into a doze. When she woke up, it was already light, and the train was approaching Petersburg. At once, thoughts of home, her husband, her son, and the cares of coming day, and those would follow, beset her. When the train stopped at Petersburg, she got out, and the first face she noticed was that of her husband. Great heavens, what has happened to his ears? Ugh. Sorry, she thought, gazing at his cold and commanding figure, and especially at the gristly ears which now so struck her, pressing as if they did against the rim of his hat. When he saw her, he came toward her with his customary ironical smile and looked straight at her with his large, tired eyes. An unpleasant feeling weighed on her heart when she felt his fixed and wary gaze, as if she expected to find him different. She was particularly struck by the feeling of dissatisfaction with herself, which she experienced when she met him. It was that ordinary, well-known feeling, as if she was dissembling, which she experienced in regard to her husband, but formerly she had not noticed it. Now she was clearly and painfully conscious of it. Yes, as you see. Oh wait, no, this is him. I need to give him like a gross voice. I'll give him a French accent. Ha! No, just kidding. Sorry, I don't need to flame. Let me channel like ick. Hold up. Because like the husband is like the ick character, right? Hold up. He's like a chud. Sorry. Listen. Sorry. As the protagonist, like I've read this book before, but like you low-key hate her husband, even though the husband like didn't really do that much wrong, but whatever. He's just like annoying. I need to give him like a chud voice. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just channeling it. Yes, as you see, here is a devoted husband, devoted as in the first year of married life, consumed by desire to see you, he said in his slow, high-pitched voice. Okay. Well, I feel like that was pretty good. I mean, I need to do it more slow. I'll do it more slow next time. In which he always addressed her, a tone which ridiculed those who could use such words in earnest. Is Cereza well? She asked.
And this is the reward I get, he said, for my ardor. He is quite well.
Chapter 31. Vronsky did not even try to sleep that night. Me when I yearn, though. Me when I yearn for, like, non-binary service top Hispanic trade. Whatever. Vronsky did not even try to sleep that night. He sat in his place, his eyes staring straight before him, not observing the people who went in or out, and if previously his appearance of the what is this word? Imperturbable. What does that mean? Context clues. Listen, I scored perfectly on the English section of the SAT. To perturb means disturb, so like undisturbable. I'm assuming that's what it means. Imperturbable calm had struck and annoyed those who did not know him. He now seemed to them even prouder and more self-confident. He looked at people as if they were inanimate things. A nervous young man, a law court official who sat opposite, hated him for that look. The young man repeatedly lit his cigarette at Vronsky's, talked to him, and even jostled to him to prove that he was not a thing but a man. Yet Vronsky still looked at him as if he was a street lamp, and the young man made grimaces, feeling that he was losing self-control under the stress of this refusal to regard him as human. Vronsky neither saw nor heard anyone. He felt himself a king, not because he believed that he had made an impression on Anna, he did not yet believe that, but because the impression she had made on him filled him with happiness and pride. What could come of this What could come of it all, he did not know, and did not even consider. He felt that all his powers, hitherto dissipated and scattered, were now concentrated and directed with the terrible energy toward one blissful aim. This made him happy. He knew only that he had told her the truth, that he would go where she went, that all the happiness of life, and the only meaning of life for him, was now in seeing and hearing her. When he had got out of the train at Bologo station to drink a glass of seltzer water and had seen Anna, he involuntarily at once told her just what he was thinking about it. He was glad he had said it to her, and now she knew and was thinking about it. He did not sleep at all that night. When he returned to the train, he kept recalling all the positions in which he had seen her, and all her words, and in his imagination, causing his heart to stand still, floated pictures of a possible future. When he got out of the train at Petersburg, he felt, despite his sleepless night, as fresh and animated as after a cold bath. He stopped outside the carriage, waiting till she appeared. I shall see her again, he thought, and smiled involuntarily. I shall see her walk, her face. She will say something, turn her head, look at me, perhaps even smile. But before seeing her, he saw her husband, whom the station master was respectfully conducted through the crowd. Dear me, the husband! Only now did Vronsky for the first time clearly realize that the husband was connected with her. He knew she had a husband, but had not believed in his existence, and only fully believed in him when he saw him there, his head and shoulders, in the black trousers containing his legs, and especially when he saw that husband, with an air of ownership, quietly take her hand. When he saw Karenin, with his fresh Petersburg face, his sternly self-confident figure, his round hat, and his slightly rounded back, Vronsky believed in his existence, and had such a disagreeable sensation as a man tortured by thirst might feel on reaching a spring and finding a dog, sheep, or pig in it, drinking the water and making it muddy. Karenin's gait, the swinging of his thighs, and his wide short feet particularly offended Vronsky, who acknowledged only his own unquestionable right to love Anna. But she was still the same, and the sight of her affected him physically, exhilarating and stimulating him and filling him with joy. He ordered the German valet, who had run up from a second-class carriage, to get his luggage and take it home, and he himself went up to her. He saw the husband and wife meet, and with the penetration of a lover, he noticed the signs of slight embarrassment when she spoke to her husband. No, she doesn't, and can't love him, he decided mentally. While he was approaching her from behind, he observed with joy that she became aware of his approach and was about to turn, but on recognizing him, again addressed her husband. Did you have a good night? He inquired, bowing toward them both, and leaving it to Karenina to take the greeting as meant for himself, and to recognize him, or not, as he pleased. Yes, quite comfortable, thank you, she replied. Her face seemed tired, and had none of that play which showed now in a smile, now in the animation of her eyes. But just for an instant, as she looked at him, he saw a gleam in her eyes, and though the spark was at once extinguished, that one instant made him happy. She glanced at her husband to see whether he knew Vronsky. Karenin looked at him with displeasure, absently trying to recall who he might be. Vronsky's calm self-confidence struck like a scythe on the stone against the cold self-confidence of Karenin. Count Vronsky, said Anna.
Ah, I believe we have met before, said Karenin, extending his hand with indifference. You traveled there with the mother and came back with the son, he said, uttering every word distinctly as though it was something valuable he was giving away. I suppose you are returning from furlough? He remarked, and without waiting for an answer, he said to his wife in a playful manner, Well, were many tears shed in Moscow over the parting? By addressing himself thus to his wife, he conveyed to Vronsky his wish to be alone with her, and turning to Vronsky, he touched his hat, but Vronsky, addressing Anna, said, I hope to have the honor of calling on you. Karenin glanced at him with his wary eyes. I shall be very pleased, he said coolly. We are at home on Mondays.
Then, finally having dismissed Vronsky, he said to his wife in his usual bantering tone,
What a good thing it was that I had just half an hour to spare to meet you and was able to show my devotion.
You insist too much on your devotion for me to value it greatly, she replied in the same playful tone, while she involuntarily listened to the sound of Vronsky's footsteps following them. But what does he matter to me? She asked herself, and began inquiring of her husband how Cereza had gone on during her absence.
Oh, splendidly! Mariette said he was very sweet, but I'm sorry to grieve you. He did not fret after you, like your husband. But I must thank you once again, my dear, for having made me the present of our day. Our dear Samovar will be in ecstasies. He called the celebrated Countess Lydia Ivanova Samovar because she was always getting heated and boiling over about something. She was asking after you, and do you know, if I may advise, you should go and see her today. Her heart is always aching about somebody. At present, in addition to all her other worries, she is concerned about the Oblonsky's reconciliation. I sound like Mr. Boss, sorry guys. Okay. Countess Lydia Ivanova was Anna's husband's friends, and the center of that set in Petersburg society with which Anna, through her husband, was most closely connected. But I wrote to her. Yes, but she wants the particulars. Go and see her, my dear, if you are not too tired. Kondraty is here with a carriage for you, and I must be off to the committee. Now I shan't have to dine alone. He went on, no longer in a bantering manner. You can't think of how I used. And with a long pressure of her hand and a special kind of smile, he helped her into the carriage. The first person to meet Anna, chapter 32. The first person to meet Anna when she reached home was her son. He ran down to the stairs, regardless of his governess's cries, and with desperate delight called out, "Mama, Mama!" When he reached her, he clung round her neck. "I told you it was Mama!" he shouted to the governess. "I knew!" Her son, like his father, produced on Anna a feeling akin to a disappointment. Damn! Why is the kid catching strays? That's crazy. Like, that's crazy, dude. Her fancy had pictured him nicer than he was in reality. She had come down to reality in order to enjoy him as he was. But even as he was charming with his fair curls, blue eyes, and plump, shapely legs and tight-fitting stockings. Anna experienced an almost physical pleasure in feeling his proximity and his caress, and a moral solace when she met his simple, trustful, and loving gaze and heard his naive questions. She unpacked the presents which Dolly's children had sent him, and told him that there was a girl in Moscow whose name was Tanya, who could read and even teach other children. "Am I worse than she?" asked Teresa. "To me, you are the best in the world." "I know," he said, smiling. Before Anna had time to finish her coffee on the Countess Lydia Ivanova was announced. The Countess was a tall, stout woman with a sickly, sallow complexion and a beautiful, dreamy black eyes. Anna was fond of her, but today she seemed to see her for the first time with all her defects. I don't know what voice to get her. Okay. I'm gonna give her the same voice as the prince, like snobby voice. "Well, my dear, did you take the olive branch?" asked the Countess Lydia Ivanova as soon as she entered the room. "Yes, it's all over, but the whole affair was not as serious as we thought," Anna replied. "My sister-in-law, in general, is too impulsive, but the Countess, who was interested in everything that did not concern her, had a habit of never listening to what interested her, and she interrupted Anna. "Oh, yes, there is much sorrow and evil in this world, and today I am terribly worried." "Why? What's the matter?" asked Anna, trying to suppress a smile. "I am getting tired of breaking lances uselessly in the cause of truth, and sometimes I feel quite unstrung. That little sisters affair," this was a philanthropic religio-patriotic society, "was going splendidly, but to work with those gentlemen is impossible," continued the Countess Lydia Ivanova, with an ironical air of resignation to fate. "They took the idea and perverted it, and now, discussing it in such a trivial, petty way, 2 or 3, your husband among them, understand the full significance of the affair, but the others just drop it. Yesterday I had a letter from Pravin." Pravin was a well-known Panslavist who resided abroad. The Countess told Anna what she had written. She then went on to tell her of other unpleasantness, and of the underhand opposition to the plan for uniting the churches, and she went away in a hurry, as she had that afternoon to be at a meeting of another society, as well to attend a Slavonic committee meeting. "This is all just as well as it was before, but how is it that I never noticed it before?" Anna said to herself. Or is it that she's just especially irritated this morning? But it is really funny. Her aim is to do good, and she's a Christian. And yet she's always angry and always has enemies. All on account of Christianity and philanthropy. After the Countess has... I can't fucking say this word! I'm crashing out. After the Countess has left,
A friend, a high official's wife, arrived and gave Anna all the Petersburg news. At 3, she also left, promising to come back to dinner. Karenina was at the ministry. Anna, left alone, spent part of the time before dinner in seeing her son have his dinner. He dined apart, and putting her things in order, and reading and answering the notes and letters that had accumulated on her table. The feeling of causeless shame she had felt during the journey and her agitation had quite vanished. In her accustomed conditions of life, she again felt firm and blameless. She thought with wonder of her stay the day before. What had happened? Nothing. Vronsky said some silly things to which it will easily be put to a stop, and I said what was necessary. It's unnecessary and impossible to speak of it to my husband. To speak of it would be to give an importance to that does not belong to it. She remembered how she had once told her husband about one of his subordinates, who very nearly made her a declaration, and how Karenina had answered that every woman living in society was liable to do such things, but that he had full confidence in her tact and would never degrade himself and her by being jealous. So there's no need to tell him. Besides, thank heaven, there's nothing to tell, she said to herself. We got 2 more chapters, okay. Chapter 33. Karenina returned from the ministry at 4 o'clock, but as often happened, he had no time to go up and see his wife. He went straight to his study to receive some petitioners and sign a few documents brought by his private secretary. At the Karenina's dinners, there were usually about 3 visitors. This time there came an old lady, a cousin of Karenina's, the director of a department, the director's wife, and a young man who had been recommended to Karenina for a post under him. Anna went into the drawing room to entertain them. Exactly at 5, the bronze clock, a style of Peter I, had not finished striking. Karenina entered in evening dress with a white tie and 2 stars on his coat, as he had to attend an official meeting directly after dinner. Every moment of his life was filled up and apportioned, and in order to find time to perform all the tasks allotted to each day, he observed the strictest regularity. "Without haste, without rest," was his motto. He entered the room, greeted everybody, and quickly sat down, smiling at his wife. "So, my solitude has come to an end. You wouldn't believe how uncomfortable." He put special emphasis on the word uncomfortable. "It is to dine alone." At dinner, he spoke a little about how Moscow affairs with his wife, asking with an ironical smile after Stephen Oblonsky, but for the most part, the conversation was general and dealt with Petersburg service and social affairs. After dinner, he spent half an hour with his guests, then having again with a smile pressed his wife's hand, went away with the council. That evening, Anna went neither to see the Princess Betty Tverskaya, who, having heard of Anna's return, had invited her, nor to the theater, where she had a box for that evening. Her chief reason for not going was that a dress on which she had counted was not ready. Although, when after her visitors had left, Anna busied herself with her toilet, she was much vexed. Before going to Moscow, she, being an adept at dressing on comparatively little money, left 3 dresses to be altered. She wanted them made up so that they should be unrecognizable, and they were to have been sent home 3 days ago, but she now found that 2 were not ready at all, while the 3rd had not been done in the way she wished. The dressmaker came to explain that it was better she had done it, and Anna lost her temper to such a degree that she afterwards felt ashamed. Completely to regain her composure, she went to the nursery and spent the evening with her son. She put him to bed herself, made the sign of the cross over him, and tucked him up. She was glad she had not gone out that evening, but had spent it so pleasantly at home. She felt light-hearted and tranquil, and saw clearly that what in the train had appeared so important had merely been an ordinary and trivial incident of society life, and that there was no reason for her to feel ashamed, or for anyone to blame her. She sat down by the fire with an English novel and awaited her husband. Exactly at 9:30 there was a ring at the front door, and he entered the room. "Here you are at last," she said, holding out her hand to him. He kissed it and seated himself beside her. "In general, I see that your journey has been a success," said he. "Yes, quite," she replied, and related everything that had happened from the beginning. Her journey with the Countess Vronsky, her arrival, the accident at the railway station. Then she spoke of her pity, for the first for her brother and then for Dolly. "I don't think that one can excuse such a man, even though he is your brother," remarked Karenina severely. Anna smiled. She knew he had said that in order to show that no consideration of kinship could hinder the expression of his sincere opinion. She knew that trait in her husband's character, knew and liked it. "I am glad that it is all ended satisfactorily and that you are back again," he continued. "But what are they saying about the new statute I carried in the council?" Anna had heard nothing about the statute and felt ashamed that she had so lightly forgotten what was of such importance to him. "Here, on the contrary, it has made quite a stir," he he said with a self-satisfied smile. Anna saw that he wanted to tell her something pleasant to himself about that affair, and by questioning she led him on to tell her all about it. With the same self-satisfied smile, he told her about the ovations he had received on account of the enactment of that statute.
I was very, very pleased. It shows that at last a clear and reasonable view of matters is beginning to be firmly held among us.
Having finished his second cup of tea and creamed his bread and butter, he rose and went to his study.
And have you not been out anywhere? You must have been dull, he said.
Oh, no, she answered, rising and following him through the room to his study. And what are you reading now?
I am now reading the Duc de Lis Poisson d'Enfer, he replied. A very remarkable book.
Anna smiled, as one smiles at the weakness of people one loves, and slipping her hand under his arm, walked with him to the study door. She knew his habit, which had become a necessity of reading in the evening. She knew that in spite of his time being almost entirely absorbed by the duties of his post, he considered it incumbent on him to follow everything of importance that appeared in the world of thought. She also knew that really, he was interested in political, philosophic, and theological books, and that art was quite foreign to his nature. Yet in spite of this, or rather because of it, he never ignored anything that caused a stir in that sphere, but considered it his duty to read everything. She knew that in the sphere of politics, philosophy, and theology, Alex Andreevovich... I'm sick. And my nose is clogging up. Alexis Avendrovich doubted and searched, but in questions of art, poetry, and especially music, which he did not at all understand, he held most definite and firm opinions. He liked talking of Shakespeare, Raphael, and Beethoven, and about the importance of the new schools of poetry and music, which in his mind were all classified with very logical exactitude. Well, God bless you, she said at the door of the study, where a shaded candle and a bottle of water had been placed ready for him beside his armchair, and I will go and write to them in Moscow. He pressed her hand again and kissed it. After all, he is a good man, truthful, kind, and remarkable in his own sphere, said Anna to herself when she had returned to her room, as if defending him from someone who accused him and declared it was impossible to love him. But why do his ears stick out so? Or has he had his hair cut? See? This is the fucking position I was in. There was a guy that I was very briefly seeing, right? And he was very smart, knew a lot of things, did a lot of things for me, spent a lot of money on me, right? But I just got the ick one day. One day I just woke up and I got the ick, and I'm like, why is he breathing like that around me? Why is he making mouth noises around me? Why is his laugh the most grating thing that I've heard to my ears? And then my ick was validated because he did something behind my back that was really weird and scummy. Won't get into that now, but yeah. Exactly at midnight, when Anna was still sitting at her writing table finishing a letter to Dolly, she heard the measured tread of slippered feet, and Karenina entered, freshly washed, his hair brushed, and a book under his arm.
It's time! It's time!
He said with a peculiar smile, going into their bedroom. And what right had he to look at him as he did? Thought Anna, remembering how Vronsky had looked at Karenina. When she was undressed, she went to the bedroom, but on her face, not only was there not a trace of that animation which during her stay in Moscow had sparkled in her eyes and smile, but on the contrary, the fire in her now seemed quenched or hidden somewhere very, very far away. Okay, chapter 34. When he went to Moscow, Vronsky had left his large flat on the Moravskaya to his friend and favorite comrade, Petritsky. Petritsky was a young lieutenant, not of very aristocratic birth, and not only wealthy, but heavily in debt, tipsy every evening, and often under arrest for amusing or improper escapades, but popular both with his comrades and superiors. Arriving home from the station about noon, Vronsky recognized a hired bowman at the front door. When he rang the bell, while still outside, he heard men's laughter, a woman's lisping voice, and Petritsky shouting, "If it is one of the villains, don't let him in!" Vronsky told the servants not to announce his arrival, and softly entered the first room. Petritsky's friend, the Baroness Chilton, her lilac satin dress and pink and white face glistening, and like a canary filling the whole room with her Parisian voice, was seated at the round table making coffee. Petritsky in his greatcoat and Captain Kamarowski in full uniform, proudly straight from parade, sat on each side of her. "Vronsky, bravo!" I gotta give them a bro voice. "Vronsky, bravo!" exclaimed Petritsky, jumping up and noisily pushing back his chair. "The master himself! Baroness, some coffee for him out of the new coffee pot. Well, this is unexpected. I hope you're pleased with this ornament to your study," he added, pointing to the Baroness. Of course, you know one another? I shouldn't think so, replied Vronsky, with a merry smile, as he pressed the Baroness's small hand. Of course, quite old friends. You have returned from Hijani, said the Baroness. I'll be at home this very moment if I am in the way. You are at home where you are, Baroness, said Vronsky. How do you do, Kamerovsky? He added, coolly shaking his hands with the captain. There now, you never managed to say such pretty things, said the Baroness to Petritsky. Oh, wait, no, that's with the Baroness. There now, you never managed to say such pretty things. I can't do a French accent. Sorry, guys, said the Baroness to Petritsky. Oh, yeah? Why not? After dinner, I'll say things quite as good as that. But after dinner, there is no merit in it. Well then, I'll give you some coffee, but have a wash and smarten yourself up, said the Baroness, again sitting down and carefully turning a small screw of the coffee pot. Pierre, pass me the coffee, she said to Petritsky, whom, not concealing their relations, she called Pierre, the French for Peter, because of his surname. I'll put a little more into the pot. You'll spoil it. No, I shan't. And your wife? The Baroness said, suddenly interrupting Vronsky's conversation with his comrade. We here have been marrying you off. Have you brought your wife? No, Baroness. A Bohemian I was born, and a Bohemian I shall die. So much the better. So much the better. Give me your hand. And the Baroness... Oh, wait, that was Vronsky saying all that, but whatever. And the Baroness, instead of releasing Vronsky, began telling him her plans for the future, interspersing jokes and asking his advice. He won't agree to a divorce. Whatever am I to do? He was her husband. I want to begin an action. What would you advise? Kamrosky, mind the coffee, it's boiling over. Don't you see I'm occupied? I want to bring in action because I need my property. You see how absurd it is because I am supposed to be unfaithful, she said contemptuously. He wishes to have the use of my property. Vronsky listened with pleasure to the merry prattle of the pretty young woman, agreed with what she said, and in half in fun gave her advice. In a word, he immediately took up in his habitual manner with women of her kind. In his Petersburg world, people were divided into two quite opposite sorts. One, the inferior sort, the paltry, stupid, and above all ridiculous people who believe that a husband should live with one wife to whom he is married, and that a maiden should be pure, a woman mindless, and a man manly, self-controlled, and firm, that one should bring up one's children to earn their living, should pay one's debts, and other nonsense of the kind. These were the old-fashioned and ridiculous people, but there was another sort of people, the real people to which all his set belonged, the fuckboys, who would above all to be well-bred, generous, bold, gay, yay! And to abandon themselves unblushingly to all their passions and laugh at everything else. Just for a moment, Vronsky was staggered, having brought back from Moscow the impression of a totally different world. But immediately, as though he had put his foot into an old slipper, he re-entered his former gay and pleasant world. The coffee never got made, but boiled over and splashed everybody, affecting just what was required. That is, it gave an excuse, much noise and laughter, staining the valuable carpet and the Baroness's dress. Now, goodbye, or you'll never get washed, and on my conscience will lie the greatest crime of a gentleman, what of cleanliness. So you advise me to put a knife to his throat? Most certainly, and hold it so that your hand will be near his lips. He will kiss the hand, and all will end well, said Vronsky. Then we meet at the French Theatre tonight. And her dress rustling, she vanished. Kamerovsky rose also, and without waiting for him to go, Vronsky shook hands with him and went to his dressing room. While he was washing, Petritsky in a few words described his own position insofar as it changed since Vronsky went away. He had no money at all. His father had said he would not give him any and would not pay his debts. His tailor and other creditor were threatening him with arrest. His CO had announced to him that if these scandals continued, he, Petritsky, would have to resign. He was sick to death of the Baroness, especially because she was always wanting to give him money. But there was another. He would let Vronsky see her, who was charming, wonderful, of severely oriental type. Huh? What do you mean by that? Okay. Is this a racist cartoon? Okay. In the style of the slave Rebecca, you know. But he had also had a quarrel with Berkashev, who wished to send his seconds, but of course nothing would come of it. But in general, everything was first-rate and extremely jolly, and without letting his friend go into details of his position, Petritsky began telling him all of the interesting news. Listening to Petritsky's familiar tales and familiar surroundings of the house he had lived in for 3 years, Vronsky experienced the satisfaction of returning to his customary careless Petersburg life. "Impossible!" he cried, releasing the pedal of his washstand, which controlled a jet of water under which he was bathing his healthy ruddy neck. "Impossible!" he cried, at the news that Laura was under the protection of Milyanov and was thrown up in Furtenhof. Yo, these fake-ass freaking names, by the way. "And he is still as stupid and self-satisfied and one of Buzikov." "Ah! About Buzikov, there's such a tale! Splendid!" shouted Petritsky. "You know, his passion for balls? He never misses a single court ball. He went to a grand ball wearing one of new helmets. Have you seen the new helmets? They're very good, much lighter. Well, he stud, but you're not listening." "Yes, I am," replied Vronsky, rubbing himself with the bath towel. "The Grand Duchess passed by with one of the ambassadors. As his ill luck would have it, as they were discussing the new helmets, the Grand Duchess wishes to show him one of them. She sees our dear Buskalov standing there." Petritsky imitated the pose. "The Grand Duchess asked him for his helmet, but he won't let her have it. What can this mean? They wink at him, nod, frown, to make him give it up? No, he just stands there more dead than alive. Just imagine it. What's his name? Wishes to take it from him, but he won't let go. The other snatches it away and hands it to the Grand Duchess. 'Here, this is one of the new ones,' said the Grand Duchess, turning it over, and just fancy! Out tumbles a pear and sweets. 2 pounds of them! The dear fellow had collected them in his helmet." Vronsky shook with laughter, and long after, when he was already talking of other things, he again went off into roars of hearty laughter, showing his compact row of strong teeth at the remembrance of the helmet. Having heard all the news, Vronsky, with the help of his valet, put on his uniform and went in to report himself. After that, he intended to go see his brother and to see Betsy, to pay a few calls in order to begin visiting the set in which he could meet Anna Karenina. As usual in Petersburg, he left the house, not to return late till night. And now we're on part 2! Let's go.